Hi everyone, welcome to our first summary and quiz review for the week. Each week I'll be putting one of these up. It's a short video. Well, some of you may not think it's short, but I think it's fairly short video. Throughout the video, there will be opportunities for you to answer questions, quiz questions based on the information that's shared. I tend to focus them on the quiz questions that people have gotten wrong, but not always. And then at the end, there'll also be an opportunity for you to ask additional questions, maybe on a quiz question you missed that we didn't discuss or something like that. So one thing about the Ed puzzles and that question at the end, I'll always have that there, but, well, actually two things. Number one, when I answer them, you'll have to go into Ed puzzle to see them. So if you've asked me a question, make sure that you monitor that so you can see what the answer is. And two, if it's something that's pressing, something maybe about this week's assignments or something that you know is a little more emergent, please email me or call me or stop by office hours if you're in the area. Because I don't see those until I grade the Ed puzzle for the following week. So, for example, I graded the Ed puzzles today from the APA thing. So a lot of you did have APA questions. I did answer them in there, but obviously I don't see them during the week. I don't see them until I go into grade. So always feel free to ask questions. That's what I'm here for. And you can email, you can call, you can stop by. But generally, email tends to be the fastest. I monitor my email almost constantly. I might not be in a position where I can respond to you constantly if I do need to research something, but I'm always monitoring that. So email is the best option, but always feel free to call too, whatever works best for you. So a few things. I did want to talk about just kind of the whole Flipgrid process. I think everyone did a pretty good job, but I would really encourage you not to read your Flipgrid, your post for the week, just because the purpose of the Flipgrid, as opposed to maybe some of you have been involved in other online classrooms where there's a traditional typed discussion board, I'm trying to get away from the formality of that. I like the Flipgrid to develop relationships, be able to have a conversation about a topic. And if someone's just sitting there, actually, I could tell most of you probably had maybe another computer or paper or something posted where you were just reading your post. In those cases, it's really it's back to that formality that you have in the typed discussion board. So feel free to, I would encourage taking notes on what you want to talk about, but just talk. Don't feel that if you mess up a word or if you flub something up that's going to reflect. Geez, see, there you go. That it's going to reflect poorly on your grade. That's not the case at all. What I'm looking for is how well you grasp the topic, and just by reading, it's hard to tell. And then also your work with your colleagues. So as you're talking with your colleagues throughout the week, remember you need an initial post that needs to be up by Wednesday. You need to have 2 additional posts to colleagues that have to be up by Sunday, but you are supposed to post on 3, in order to get full credit, you need to post on 3 different days during the week. Also, if someone asks you a question, you need to answer them. So be sure that you're monitoring your own initial post as well and what questions may have been asked of you. So that's what I'm looking for in the Flipgrid, but it's really to get away from, I found that people were just, they're posting their initial post, there's tons of citations in it or whatever. And they're so focused on making sure they're citing things and making sure the APA format of the references are correct, and that we weren't having a discussion. It was just much more formal than I was interested in. So hence the reason we went with this. Hopefully you'll find that you'll probably jive well with some folks and maybe not as interested in other folks' content. But I would encourage you to not just always post in response to 1 or 2 students. Really take a look at what everyone has to say. You may learn more about something that another student feels or is interested in that maybe you haven't been exposed to. We have folks in class that are full-time students, but we also have folks in class that work full-time already in healthcare organizations. So make sure that you make the rounds on people's Flipgrid posts to get a feel for what everyone has to say on various topics. In this class, what we do is this is our initial intro class. So each week we do a different topic. So this week, obviously, we talked a bit about leadership and how how organizations function, very general stuff. When we move to, and I'm going to click over in here, we move to the week 2. Well, I can't because my internet is down apparently. When we go to week 2, I can get it to open back up here. Sorry about that. But you'll see that we're moving to a different topic area. There are 7 functional areas of healthcare administration or healthcare overall that we will work on in our course. And so next week, or this current week, week 2, our functional area that we're looking at, actually there's kind of 2 in this week, strategic planning. Overall, and then also law and ethics. So they kind of go hand in hand. You need to obviously make sure that you're operating in an ethical manner anytime that you are looking at strategy, and they also then go hand in hand with what we talked about this past week in week 1, which was mainly leadership. You'll also find in every classroom, I also teach this class live in the classroom. We're not doing that this term, we do that in the fall. But I do include, I put it as optional because if you read the textbook, you'll get the same information. I'm trying to, this is for purposes of our lecture time in the classroom, but I do include those slides. So feel free to review those slides. They're a great way to kind of digest the information that is in the class or that is in the textbook and that is found in the other aspects of our learning model here in the online classroom. So I have included them. It's not a requirement that you review them, but they can help you, especially when preparing for the quiz. We'll move to the quiz. We do have a quiz each week in this class, as well as a final exam. But the quiz, what I will do is go through the quiz and pull out the questions that are answered wrong most frequently, and those are the questions that I'll go over here in the Ed Puzzle each week. For this past week, I pulled out 4 questions that tended to be answered incorrectly. Sorry, wrong side of the paper. First question is, which is a guideline for healthcare leaders when being responsible to their organization as per the ACHE Code of Ethics? So as healthcare leaders, we follow the ACHE, American College of Healthcare Executives, is our professional organization. There are many others, and you've probably, depending on how long you've been in the program, within the last couple of months, we did a kind of laid many of those professional organizations out in one of our advising newsletters. But ACHE tends to be the overarching one, especially for the hospital setting. But there are others that are similar, and they have similar codes of ethics. The one thing that is the focus, and I have this is from the slide deck, the focus of this question was which guideline is important when healthcare leaders are being responsible to their organization. And you can see here that there are these 6 areas of responsibility. And when we're looking at to the organization, of the answers that were provided, proper resource allocation is the item that is the correct answer. Now the others, the other answers that were listed, workplace environment, evaluating quality of care, and providing appropriate access to services, they're all on here as well, but they're not when we're being responsible to our organization. They are community and society, employees, or what is the other one? To patients. Quality of care is to patients served. So be sure that you read carefully when you're doing your quiz questions, because that one led a few people astray. Next question, which is a new trend for healthcare governance? So we talk about healthcare governance in the textbook. It's talked about, and healthcare governance is really that process. And actually, I think there's a few slides on it here. I'll focus down here. It is really that strategic oversight of an organization. So every organization is going, obviously there's going to be a CEO, but that's not the governance structure. The governance structure is that higher level, the top accountable body, the people that hire the CEO, that's your governance structure. So sometimes it's called board of trustees, sometimes it's called board of directors, sometimes it's called a board of governors. They can be called all kinds of things, but they tend to be people not from your organization, but from outside of your organization that work to oversee strategy, oversee the organization, and they're the ones that hire the CEO. They are the CEO's boss ultimately for an organization. So our question was, what is a new trend for healthcare governance? And I do have some trends listed here that were talked about in the text. Things like having a smaller board, being able to use data and various evaluations to identify issues, making sure that conflicts of interest are disclosed, very important. But also, this last one here, managing change, that is a newer healthcare governance trend, something that was not necessarily the types of things that governing bodies had been doing in the past. So our correct answer for which is a new trend for healthcare governance, the answer was manage change. Some of the other answers listed, actually the one that was most frequently chosen was focus on competence of individual providers. That's probably not something the governing body is going to be tasked with. Overall, they may have a hand in making decisions based on the competency, but the competency of, say, a physician or nursing staff, the people on the governing board may not have the expertise to make those types of evaluations. So they'll look for those with that expertise in the organization to make those evaluations and share that with the governing board moving forward. Next question. Which leadership theory correctly matches the stated leadership focus? There are 4 answers. I'm not going to go down through all of them, but I'll talk briefly about the correct answer. So the leadership theory that was mentioned is situational approach, and the situational approach focuses on the needs of the subordinates. So when you have a leader using, you can't really pigeonhole any leader. They're going to take different paths and do things differently based on the needs of that day. But the situational approach to leadership really focuses on what do the folks, the subordinates, the staff people or middle managers, if you're a higher level manager, what are their needs? How you adapt your leadership style and your leadership approach based on what their needs are. So you may have, good example, I'm sure most of you, if you've had a job, I think a lot of you have probably had jobs maybe through high school, maybe now in college, or if you're someone that's already working in the healthcare setting, think about where you have someone that is maybe a micromanager. So you may have someone that is not following this type of approach, especially if you're taking an online class. You probably like to work independently. You probably like to be able to do your own thing. And if you have someone above you that's a micromanager, that is not does not fit your needs oftentimes. So a leader that's following a situational approach may be that same person that's over a group of other people. And they may take a micromanaging approach to some of the employees to really focus on what their needs are, if that's something that they want. Sometimes employees want a lot of direction. They want check-ins with their managers frequently so they know where they stand. That type of a management style works very well for them. Whereas then you'll have other employees that are very independent, can work on their own, have the skill set to work on their own, and that micromanaging style is not going to work for them. So they'll take a different approach to those employees. Check in less frequently, provide them direction and set them on their way, those types of things. So you're really going to take a different approach. The situational approach to leadership is really going to be based on the needs of those subordinates. Next question. Which is not a type of leader or follower that is leader/follower that is needed to produce an interdependent leadership system? So, and actually in this, I think I can flip back to it here. I apologize for flipping through these slides. In our work this past week, we had we looked at theories of leadership, like the situational approach. We looked at competencies of leadership. We looked at styles of leadership, but we also looked at types of leaders. So these are the 3 types of leaders that are defined in the textbook: strategic, network, and operational. So a strategic leader is really going to be, and this is what I would really advise or suggest people learn to be strategic thinkers, to be able to align people, processes, and values, making sure that you have both that internal focus, which is really focusing on your people, but that external focus of, okay, what is our purpose in this community? How do external stakeholders impact us? And we'll talk a little bit about that this week when we're talking about strategy. So higher level leaders tend to be strategic leaders. They also tend to be network leaders. So they have that external focus. Okay, let's get our people connected. Let's not have siloed operations. That's the higher up you go in the organization, you tend to find people that are more network type leaders. Operational leaders are very much an internal focus. So my focus is this department, and I am tasked with overseeing it, and they are worried about their department and their things, as opposed to networking and getting outside of that, or thinking strategically, which is a big picture type leader. So there are these 3 types of leaders, and as they were tasked, or as they were discussed in the text, these 3 types are really all needed to have an interdependent system. In our case, we're looking at healthcare, but in any system. So you need that strategy person that looks at both internal and external focuses. You need that network person that is really very interested in connecting people. And then you need those operational people. There's nothing wrong with being that type of leader. You need folks that are heads down in your departments, making change there on the local level. So you really need all of those 3 types. The answer for this question, the question to remind you, because I've been talking for a bit, which is not a type of leader follower that is needed to produce an interdependent leadership system. The correct answer was transformational. So transformational leadership is a style. It's very much a style of leadership where you're very focused. They tend to be kind of these top 2 types combined, where you're very focused on transforming your organization. They tend to be very charismatic. The transformational leader that I always think of when we think of the greater scope of leaders was President Obama. Very transformational leader, very charismatic, very focused on the strategy overall and how to push things forward. I always think of him when I think of transformational leaders. But it isn't a type of leader, that's a style. So like I said, we had styles, we had types, we had characteristics or competencies, sorry about that, characteristics or competencies, and then and we have theory as well, and some of the history of leadership. So there's a lot of different elements, but in this case, our answer was transformational because that is not a type of leadership. Okay, so that's all I have for this week. If you have other questions, please reach out. And like I said, the question box at the end here is more focused on, maybe additional questions on the quiz or something that's not an urgent need. If you have urgent questions that you want answered before next week when I do my grading, please just drop me a note, give me a call, stop by office hours, and I'm happy to help out. So I'm looking forward to, sorry, I'm sure you're sick of listening to me by now. This video is probably a little longer than they will be normally. So this week we have strategic planning, like I said. So in your for your Flipgrid this week, for your discussion this week, we're not using Flipgrid. We're going back to the traditional written discussion, mainly because I want you to be able to look at everybody else's posts, make sure you're not posting about the same organization if you can, and then we're going to be talking about how mission, vision, and values relates to how that organization is moving things forward. So if you have I'll just choose something randomly. If you have an organization that in their mission and vision talk about how they're so focused on wellness and making people well, et cetera, and then if you look at their website, or if you're familiar with the organization and they're really not focused on that kind of thing, that's really what we're looking at. Also, this week we have a case study. So everyone has been broken up into groups. There's 5 groups. So you want to get in touch with your group. If you want to email your group, your screen looks a little different than mine, but over here there is still a thing that says send email. You can click into the send email, and if you choose single select users, you can click on that and choose the people in your group. If you want to email to everybody, then you can exchange emails or whatever you would like to do to set up time to chat about your case study. So let's scroll back down here. So you want to look at the case study, whether you've been assigned to 1 or 2. There's 2 different ones. And then you're going to create a PowerPoint presentation that's going to be submitted to the classroom. Every student needs to submit the PowerPoint. So if you are part of a group, be sure that you're submitting. You don't just submit it once. Every student needs to submit it. The other thing that we'll be doing is a self and peer assessment of the work done in the group. So don't rest on your laurels and assume someone else is going to do this for you, because everyone will have the opportunity to assess their own work in the group and everyone else's work in their group, and it will affect grading. If there's someone in your group that has not participated in emails, that has not been involved in any way, they are not going to get credit for the work that was done by the rest of the group. So be sure that you're taking part in your groups, working on the assignments. If you want to name a leader for the group, that's fine, but be sure that everyone is involved in the process. And then you can certainly meet live in person. You can talk via telephone. Google Hangouts are free, so you can use that. Or you can actually click this link. It'll open up the Collaborate Classroom, and feel free to use that as well. So all of those are available to you, and you can use whichever makes sense. So any questions on the work this week, or on discussion, or any quiz questions that we didn't go over, please feel free to reach out. You will be able to see your quiz, the answer that you answered, the correct answer if you answered something wrong, but it doesn't open up until everyone has taken the quiz, and we have a couple of students that are not, I think they're probably have dropped the class and it just hasn't happened yet. So I think that you probably still can't see the answers, but I rest assured you will be able to see all of your answers from your quizzes. So that's all I have, and look forward to talking with everyone in the discussion this week. Thanks.